The car business is rapidly changing, and modern car dealers are meeting the demand. I'm Michael Cirillo, and together we're going to explore what it takes to create a thriving dealership and life in the retail automotive industry. Join me each week for inspiring conversations with subject matter experts that are designed to help you grow. This is the Dealer Playbook. Look, longtime listeners of the podcast will know how important I believe personal branding is to the success of your career as a car sales professional. In fact, some of our earliest episodes 7 years ago spoke about creating a business within the business, thinking like an entrepreneur. We even coined the term automotivepreneur. The OGDP beers will remember us talking about becoming an automotivepreneur. But look, as the car shopping experience evolves and as unnecessary touch points are removed from the buying process, there is one touch point that I believe can have a tremendous positive impact on the customer experience, and that is the customer's interaction with you, the automotive professional. But personal branding goes far beyond and much deeper than a fancy logo or whether or not you should go by the name, quote, your Honda guy, close quote, or quote, the Jeep girl, close quote, or whatever the heck we spend all of our time trying to think of names. In this episode, I'm thrilled to be joined by my good friend, Jaylissa Lea, a personal brand strategist who works with high-performing entrepreneurs to help them have a great impact, build undeniable authority, and expand their reach within the market. Jaylissa has a background in clinical psychology, neuro-linguistic programming, and hypnotherapy, and utilizes those disciplines to help her clients create powerful brands. You can catch her new podcast, Modern Luxury Lounge, where she frequently interviews business leaders about the topics of luxury branding. And you can catch that wherever you get your podcasts. Jaylissa, my friend, welcome to the Dealer Playbook podcast. I'm glad you are here.
I'm excited too. That was an awesome intro.
Oh, shucks. Were you taking notes?
I was taking mental notes for my podcast too.
This is seriously one of the topics that started the show 7 years ago was the importance of personal branding. We spoke so much to it. We talked a lot about how car sales professionals especially can build a brand within the brand. Now, I've had the pleasure of hearing you speak frequently about the importance of building a personal brand, especially in the context of maybe those that work inside of a company, how they still need to be focused on building their personal brand. But I'm curious, just as a starting point from your experience working with different business professionals, what's the number one mistake or hang up that people have when it comes to building a personal brand for themselves?
Yeah, I think what you said early on is so true. Like about the logo, the aesthetics, that's a huge part, is that they think it's just what's on the outside. And the other part is thinking about the personal brand is all about them. So a lot of people think that the personal brand is about bragging, about their achievements, feeding into their ego. It's about what other people think about them, which partially is true, but it's not even about you. And so, especially when we're talking about making an impactful brand, right? So I think which I think is really interesting, how you 7 years ago you even talked about that. So back in the days, 7 years ago, but it's not even a thing that people are starting to realize until social media became a huge asset.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that, and being totally open, right? Like, it's something I've even struggled with, which is why I, speak to you and why we talk a lot about this stuff. You see what others are doing on social, and I think it creates a measure of like FOMO, perhaps is the best or lack of best term. And you go, oh man, they're doing that. I need to do that. We do something similar. Therefore, if I'm not doing that, I'm really missing out. And then, of course, you go to a conference or an event or a clubhouse room and you hear from somebody that says, if you're not doing X, you're missing out. And so all of a sudden you jump into an activity that you don't even know how it maps to anything.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we overcome that? Like what is the best first thing that we could be doing to actually fortify or I guess build a foundation for our personal brand?
Yeah. So as you mentioned earlier in the intro, I have a extensive background in psychology. So when I teach personal brand, 90% of it is based on psychology. 10% is the strategy. Actually, how do you implement it? So with the personal brand, I really want people to start thinking about it as relationship building, authority building, human connection. So if you take that huge concept out, how it's like, it's just for famous people or it's a name for yourself, you have to pretend to be someone else. You already have a personal brand because you have a relationship with your family. They talk about you in a certain way. Your friends talk about you a certain way. Your colleagues and your audience or your clients, your leads talk about you in a certain way. So start thinking, having that mindset shift of that it's not a new thing. It's happening all the time around you. And it's just about relationship building. Right. So like that's a shift to make. And the other one is to think about, why do you want to build a personal brand? So if you're within the automotive industry, you work within a company, why is it that you want to start building a name for yourself? Like you're saying, other people see other people do it and then they started doing it, but they don't know why they're doing what they're doing. A lot of people know what it is that they're doing, but not a lot of people actually know why behind it. So they see other people posting their sandwiches, their vacations, and they feel like the need to do the same. And then now you just end up having a brand, not really a brand with purpose. And that's a huge thing that I see as a mistake. A lot of people just build a brand just to say, hey, I have something online, I have social media, but does it actually make an impact? That's another story.
So you're saying that sandwiches don't, I'm just taking notes, sandwiches don't sell cars. Okay.
Hey, it does, but if that is a strategy, right, within your personal brand, because we're talking about relationship building. So even you beyond a salesperson, you have hobbies. You're a person. Maybe if you're a foodie person, so it makes sense why you would post about sandwiches. But having that strategic background in the back of your mind, knowing that this is what you're known for. Maybe you're the sandwich guy, so it does make sense for you to post it. But don't post something just because other people are doing it, like you're saying before.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about building this deeper human connection. I was just listening to a podcast with the actor John Krasinski from The Office. And he was talking about how none of them knew what The Office would become. In fact, he said every Friday there was always this threat that the show was going to get canceled. All these years later, though, he was speaking about what they had built there by virtue of these characters and how relatable they were, that people even today are approaching the cast and saying, this helped me through such a tough time. Or he talked about how he was on an airplane and he was waiting in the terminal to get on a flight. And this woman passed him a note and just said, look, I don't want to bother you, but just here, take this. And so when he got on the plane, he opened the note and the note said, last week, my father passed away. And I'm so grateful that he died laughing because we spent so much time in the hospital watching The Office.
Oh my God.
And how that impacted him as the actor. He's saying, whoa, this is bigger than a TV show. This is bigger than a cast or crew. This is something that people could relate to, that they built a deep human connection with. Well, I see a parallel based on what you're saying. I'm not just a car dealer. I'm not just a car sales professional. I can actually have a very profound and deep connection with my community and with individuals throughout my community. And I love what you're saying about like doing that through something that is authentic to you. Maybe it's food. Maybe you're a mountain biker, or, you're into boats or airplanes or something. Like you just finding something that's so authentic to you. Why do you think people struggle kind of presenting themselves authentically?
I think this is really interesting because I was just writing this up for my masterclass of why people don't do it. They know what to do, but they don't do it. And a lot of them stem from the fear of validation, right? Like part of what I do with a modern luxury brand, a personal brand, it's not just about, the modern luxury part. It's not just about the materials or the status or the monetary values and things, but it's rather in human connection, relationship building. And so with that, it's almost like you're thinking about why it's so important for you to connect with other people on a more personal level. And modern luxury is all about validating yourself without external validation. It's not about what will fulfill someone else's cup, but what will fulfill your cup. But that's something that's not even taught in our society or ever. We're always talking about how to get a job to serve other people. But what about ourselves? What about our values? It's scary to look in the mirror and dig deep into what is it that I actually want in my life, right? Because I did this exercise with you and you're like, oh my God, I didn't even realize like personal branding, this is pretty in depth. But these are things that are not taught in school. What are our values? What are core values that are non-negotiable? You know, what are the things that are our purpose? What is our commitment? How do we keep ourselves accountable? These are things that are not taught, and it's scary to have to reflect after all these years of not even thinking about it.
Yeah.
Let alone being vulnerable and talking about it when you don't know what you're talking about and you try to talk about it and people are like, okay, what are they talking about? Right. So getting that clarity work in the very beginning of establishing your personal brand, what makes you happy. It's a scary thing because success without fulfillment is just failure. So people don't want to admit that, oh, the cars don't make me happy. This house doesn't make me happy. I don't want to seem like I'm empty, even though I have all these things.
Yeah. It's funny. You and I were talking about this. You've been pretty involved with me and my wife in our home buying journey. And one of the things I even caught myself saying to you is like, we didn't buy the biggest house. And then when I said it, I was like, why does that even matter? Mm-hmm. Like, why does it matter the size of my house? We have created, I think, in our society, this expectation that success equals bigger or more grand or whatever. When going through this exercise with me, as you've just mentioned, and causing myself to reflect at an even deeper level than I think I ever had, just looking inward, like you said, looking in the mirror, I was reminded of and certainly deeply validated that I don't care about material things as much as I thought. And what was actually more painful was giving myself permission to let go of that. Or let go of the idea of grandiose stuff and accept that I think I might actually be more minimalist than I thought.
Yeah.
And
doesn't
for me,
it
that
feel like an
creates luxury.
identity loss?
It did. I was like, wait, who am I for a minute here? And so
Where
what
did
you're
Michael
saying,
go?
so you're saying though, you have to kind of be prepared to go through that for yourself.
It's like an ego death, right? It's as scary as it sounds, is like digging deep into who you are. What is it that you truly want beyond just if no one's looking at all? What do you still want the things that you want? Are you still going to post about the things that you post? If not, you're just doing it for external validation. Because like if you started posting a minimal house, you're going against the norm. Two, it's like an identity loss of how other people has been seeing you. Now you're coming out with like a different perspective. And another scary thing is like what you're saying, not caring at all. That's like a different step of self-confidence. When you don't care, it's like the story of your uncle that you told me about, how he's just so satisfied, so happy being in his little place. Right. And that takes like a lot of huge courage and confidence of knowing I'm okay with this. I'm totally happy with just having two things in a little treehouse or whatever it is, going against the norm, right. and feeling like I don't have to explain myself because that's what makes me happy. That's a true luxury.
Yeah, you and I were on a call earlier this week with a colleague of ours, Stephen, who actually I've had on the podcast, Stephen Kuhn. And at one point, he called me out because I was looking down from the Zoom call and I was on my phone. And I said, "Oh, just by the way, I'm taking notes. I'm not." And he goes, "Brother, nobody was asking. You don't owe anybody an explanation." And I think that's kind of like what you're talking about here. Once you've kind of like identified your core values and what makes you happy and owning it, you don't even have to unapologetically accept it. You actually move, like what you're saying, what I'm picking up here is you move way past being unapologetic and just being confident.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like finding that self-validation, self-confidence of exactly who you are. It's like what I think with Ali Rita, such a successful personal brand with such a good personal brand within your business and automotive, is that he's so unapologetically him. He comes when people come into the auto, for in the shop, he is like, here's my card. If you need anything, just let me know. He doesn't even talk about the car. He doesn't even talk about sales. He cares about building that relationship, and he knows his purpose. It's like we talk about, Clubhouse. It's a different experience when you know what your purpose is. And you go there, you get your purpose. You have that self-validation that you've done your job versus hang out there just to hang out, just to be busy instead of productive. Once you have that knowledge of why you're there, he was there to build a relationship. That's what made him so successful. That's what made him so different. Everybody else was so worried about hitting the quotas and selling cars and learning about everything and being the most knowledgeable person. But his goal was different. His goal was just to build relationship, to build a name for himself, that he's reliable and he's someone that you can go to no matter what.
Yeah. And when you look at somebody like him, well, not somebody, when you look at him, where he's consistently selling 100, I would say his average is between 120 and 150 cars a month, does not take any what we call ups. Like, so customers walk him through, he doesn't take any, it is all repeat referral relationship business. He doesn't even buy, he's not standing out on the lot with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth on his phone, wondering where people are and why they're not coming in. He's really taken what you're saying to that next level. You walk in, he's basically created a store within the store with its own little waiting room. And he's got a team, almost how like realtors will have an assistant doing that paperwork. And like he is a practitioner. He's like a doctor, and he's just, because he's taken what you're talking about to just a whole new level. He knows what his purpose is, and it extends far beyond selling vehicles. That's
clarity work that nobody ever wants to do, right? Like people just want to buy another course to know what strategy it is, but no one ever wants to admit that 90% of your success is your mindset, is psychology, is digging deep into what is it that you actually want. For him, it's actually building those connection, building those relationship beyond just car salesperson. He's known for more. That's why you get so much referrals, because you build a reputation that other people can trust. And that's what he focused on. He focused on something that no one else was focusing on. Right. And he knew himself very clearly, really well, because he did the deep work that nobody else wants to do.
This always comes back to, so I'm a car sales professional. I'm in the grind. I have to make ends meet. How do I do all of this work that you're talking about? Like how do I create space for this while also simultaneously trying to keep food on my table? I think that's the hang up that a lot of people get stuck with. They're like, oh man, this sounds like so much, but I'm so like, I'm almost in panic mode. What do you recommend? What are maybe some questions that people could be asking themselves to really kick this off and get a deeper understanding of what they want and what their purpose is?
Yeah. So like getting to know your why. I think I actually asked you that this morning. Why do you want to build a personal brand? Because a lot of people, like you're saying, they build one just because other people have it. But what is your why? So anything is possible. Can become a priority if you make it, right? If that's something that you really want to do. But the problem is a lot of people make to-do lists without realizing what are these steps? How do they relate to a bigger goal? So knowing what's your bigger goal, because there's a ripple effect of building your personal brand, right? It's to build an identity, get a clarity of who you are beyond your business that you're involved in, monetizing off of your name, making another stream of income. That might be one, or building a better network, having a better partnership, maybe getting into the press is a huge one, investment opportunities from different people, or building a tribe that you never had. For me, that's huge because I came from a smaller family. So I want to build a tribe that I can be connected to. Leaving a legacy. Maybe you want to write a book, do speaking engagement. You want to have your own podcast, right? Like you, maybe you want to leave a course, something legacy before you die, like anything like that, where you know that this serves a bigger goal because you didn't come on this earth just to survive. Right? You came to live, you came to make a difference and an impact. So even though you're working tirelessly in your job right now, what is that bigger goal that you want to reach? Even as a salesperson, what is that bigger goal? How does your personal brand ties into that larger goal to expand it even more? Because once you build the brand, it just emphasizes and exposes everything that you do to the world, and it accelerates the process even more. So think about it that way, the end goal. It's like, why do we go to school? What is the end goal of that? Because if you just focus on the daily mundane task, it's going to be really hard for you to prioritize anything beyond the bare minimum that you need to do. So knowing like what your bigger end goal is really important.
I think that's so powerful. How you're phrasing this, because we often hear terms like, oh, well, hindsight is 20/20. But what you're talking about is actually creating foresight, stepping forward, not constantly looking back saying, oh, I should have, I could have, I would have. You're saying, no, like, hey, let's map this. Maybe today will suck. Maybe today is going to be one of those days. However, when you understand how that day, one of those days, can map to the bigger goal, then you're still actually moving forward. And when you look back, you can go, oh, that was awesome.
And that's always what I tell people about, your brand equity is how every single day, everything you do contributes into a bigger cause, whether it is a success, a win, or is it a failure? It's also a lens, right? When I talk about modern luxury, a concept that I teach is luxury is a lens. It's how you see things. Do you have to do it or do you get to do it? Is this a failure or is this a learning opportunity so that the next time you know what not to do? It's like playing a video game, like Super Mario's. When you play it, you fail so many times. Why do people keep going? It's like, when the mushroom's coming, when the next little block is coming. So now you are already like about to click, that little top button before it even comes because you're ready. And so like, are you seeing this as a failure? Like, okay, I lost the game. I'm never going to do it again. Or is I lost the game, but I know what to expect now.
Tell us you're from California without telling us you're from California. I don't see any irony in the fact that you were like, I know when the shrooms are coming. Living in California.
God, there's mushrooms in Super Mario. That's how you get become an adult.
I know, but it was just so funny. Quick so little funny side story. I grew up in British Columbia, Canada. There is an area in British Columbia known for its weed. It's actually a draft dodger town called Cherryville. That's the actual name. That's the actual name of the town, Cherryville. Well, I had a couple of buddies who went down to California one year and they were surfing. They met up with some, California beach bum kind of dudes and they were all surfing together. And the Californians were like, so where are you guys from? They're like, oh, well, nobody's going to know Vernon, British Columbia. It's a small rural area. So they said, Vancouver? And the Californians were like, Vancouver? And I never heard of it. So they're like, so then they thought, well, what's the next biggest town to where we are? So they said Kelowna. And they're like, I don't know quota. So one of my buddies just randomly throws out, he's like, oh, we're from, you ever heard of Cherryville? No joke, Jaylissa, the Californians were like, Cherryville, oh my gosh, man, they got the best weed.
I mean, you could have just went straight there, right? Why beat around the bush? Should have
You're
known
like,
better.
who would know Cherryville, though? It's like, we used to joke that when they light a bonfire, the whole community gets high. Anyways, little side story, but also kind of like, look at the brand of Cherryville while we're at it.
Yeah, see, there you go. It serves a bigger purpose.
What do they stand for? So you talk a lot about essentially standing for something, core values, purpose, clarity. What is your why? Inherent in that, do we need to also get clarity on what we stand against? Like, does that have to be as clear to us as what we stand for?
Absolutely. I think that is the first step, again, of like modern luxury, right? It's relationship building. Within relationship building, when we talk about your values, it's basically your standards and your boundaries. What are your non-negotiables? What are the things that is a line that you do not cross? And that allows other people to respect you as a luxury brand. If you think about any luxury brands out there that are, concrete luxury brands, they have certain things that that they do not do, that they do not go outside of their realm, because that's what they're known for. The more niche you are, the better it is, because as human beings, our minds are limited to one idea at a time. So you're known for one idea at a time. And that's why you want to keep your boundaries very tightly, your values, getting that clarity of knowing these are the people that I will work with. These are people that I won't work with because of XYZ, because our values are not aligned. Your values are your soul contract, something that I wish I was taught in school, because it's not just applicable to when you go into a company and you learn about their core values, you have to memorize it. It's something that you can have as a human, because your core values will dictate the quality of relationship that you have with other people, whether it's family, friends, partner, clients, your boss, whatever it is. No, that's why, going into a company, they ask what your values are, because if that's not aligned, then it's not going to be external issues. It's going to be all about internal issues. So knowing what your boundaries are, like what you're standing for, and what are some things that you do not tolerate, will make you that luxury brand, because now you have standards.
Yeah, I love that. And I found, to your point, when you have clarity on those standards, boy, does the work experience and the life experience, all facets of life, professional, spiritual, personal, boy, does it become much more enjoyable.
Yeah. And it's like, life is so much more simple. I'm like, wow, once I found my values, I was like, oh crap, this is applicable to everything. I know I almost said something else. It's applicable to everything. And then I'm like, this is why, one of my family member, we have very different values. I'm like, this explains why we didn't work out this whole time. It wasn't because of, the external issues or personality. It's because our values are not aligned. And that's okay. Sometimes, not everyone's going to have the same value. That's why we're different beings. But in order to work together, we have to respect each other's values, our point of views, right? And if that line of respect is gone, then it's going to turn into something that is not going to be pretty. And so your personal brand, the biggest thing is actually your values. So like Ali Rita, his value is relationship, it's commitment, it's accountability, it's trust. So he will attract people that are, beyond just someone who likes sandwiches or whatever he might like the other hobbies. But the values is what attract so many clients to him, because they know him as a person with integrity and knowing him as a person with standards as well.
Yeah. I hope for you that's listening right now, you have stopped to say, wait a minute, they haven't brought up logo. They have not brought up a name. What should I name? They have not brought any of that up. And it circles back to what Jaylissa was saying earlier. This is 90% psychology, mindset, 10% strategy. Most of the time I would submit, and I know you've seen this, Jaylissa, people focus 95% on strategy without having the mindset. Their mindset is, I got to make more money. I got to sell more cars. I got to do more of the thing. And what happens is they flip-flop. They're driven with the wind and tossed is what I call it. Like a gust of wind comes and they're flying off into a new direction. And we just see that so often. So many people, my beloved DPB gang, how many of you have sent me messages with, what do you think of this logo? Right. And that's not a knock. That's not a dig. It's just simply like, hey, if you want the type of personal brand that attracts your ideal audience, that like makes you a magnet for your ideal audience, this is the work that you got to put in first. This is the clarity that you need to get. So I want to ask you this. What are some, I guess, searching type questions I could be asking myself, or those listening could ask themselves, to really kick this off, like push their brain in the right direction for personal brand?
Yeah. So getting to know like what everything that we kind of talked about today is, what is your goal? Where are you at right now currently? What is your goal? What is that gap in between that is missing from your goal? Because once you know what your goal is, you put that pinpoint in your map, everything just accelerates. Without that goal in mind, you're just almost like driving a car, wasting gas in circles, and you're not really getting anywhere, right? So you need to know what your goals are, what your values are, what are things that, like we're just talking about, non-negotiables, because your value is what makes you a person that is memorable, because of that experience with you over time that builds trust, because your values are aligned. So knowing like how you're going to commit to it, what are your promises to yourself? Because if you can't even keep a promise to yourself, you're not going to be able to keep a promise to your clients, your leads, your audience. So knowing those clarity work is so important, and knowing what is it that your ideal audience even want, the people that you normally attract. What is the underlying theme that you've noticed? You want to be able to speak to them directly, and it's one person as well, because we're talking about audience. Everyone starts to think about a crowd, very generalized. But when you start to talk to everyone, then you're essentially talking to nobody. And that becomes very diluted. You don't want to be a diluted brand. You want to be a modern luxury brand where you're known for something. You stand out for something. So like, those are really good questions to start asking yourself of, what is it that you actually truly want? How do you want other people to feel? Because when we're talking about modern luxury, it's all about a feeling. If you ever look at any luxury brand, when in their advertisement, they never talk about the features of their cologne or, their suit or whatever. They never talk about the prices. They never talk about these little micro details. They're thinking about the bigger picture. They're selling a transformation. So how do you want the other person to feel after experience, interaction with you? Because if you can sell that feeling, the subconscious mind is more likely to remember it, because people don't remember what you say. They remember how you make them feel. So really thinking about, how do you want that person to feel after they have experienced the interaction with you? Is it empowerment? Is it safety? Is it excitement? Is it calm? What is that for them? And building that story framework that is unique to you. So why did you even come into this car industry? Why is this so important to you? What is the journey that you went through that you can connect with other people? Because your story is what sells. Information is so easy to forget. If you talk to them about something that they can Google, why do they need you? Right? That's not a personal brand. That's just a business brand. So like thinking about what is your brand story frame? What are the things that you've gone through that you can connect with people? Because once you build that relationship where they feel like your family, you can sell anything.
Yeah, you're selling without even selling.
Exactly.
You're far beyond sales tactics, right? I love what you just said, and I kind of want to put an exclamation point on it, which is, and especially because I know that some may be thinking this. There's this ongoing joke in the industry that that you got into the business because you just got out of jail. That's why, like you just got out of jail, or you have a record, and now you're in the car industry.
Oh my gosh.
Or I just needed a job. I was desperate, right? McDonald's wasn't hiring, or whatever. Like there's this just kind of this internal joke / stigma. We often joke about how a body is not better than nobody, to try and but that actually, because I know some people are thinking that, well, I just got into this because I need a job. And I want to get in front of that with an exclamation point on what you just said, which is your story framework and your mindset. Think about this for a minute. For those that are going like, oh man, well, I just got into it because I needed a paycheck or whatever. Okay, well, pause right there. There's actually a story there. And I want you to think about it so that you don't leave discouraged. The story is that you are a go-getter, that you will create a future for yourself by doing whatever you can and taking whatever job you can get to make it happen. Because think of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of individuals who won't do that. And so I'm always looking for a positive spin to create your framework. But I wanted to get in front of that, Jaylissa, because I know a lot of people in the industry did just get into it. Like they kind of stumbled into it. Nobody was born. Nobody grew up saying, I'm going to work in the car business when I grow up. You know what I mean? Like it's not one of those. I think more people grow up saying I will serve in the military than people that say I will. Do you know what I mean? Like work in the car business. But I want to put a spin on that, and it ties back to everything you've been sharing with us today, which I think is so powerful about the importance of mindset. I don't think a lot of people think about mindset and personal brand going together. But I can attest, and especially having, working through this process with you for my own, to strengthen my own brand and to leave a greater impact and feed into the legacy, I can attest to the fact that when you get clear on this stuff, on this mindset, on your values, on your non-negotiables, like Jaylissa has been talking about, things accelerate. And the reason I think at this point, and I'm sure it will expand, the reason it's accelerating is because of the confidence that comes from that clarity. So,
you know exactly what you want. It's easier to get something when you know exactly what you want rather than, having a blindfold and just throwing things, throwing darts at the bullseye without realizing where it is. But once you figure that out. It's like throwing
darts at the garbage can, wondering why you're not hitting the dartboard.
Yeah, exactly.
You were aiming in the wrong direction.
Yeah. I mean, even going back to what you're saying, your brand story framework, why cars? There's actually, I don't think anything happens, for no reason. I think everything is a story that stacks over time. So even thinking about maybe as a child, what does a car mean to you? What are your life peak points that you can find a theme that ties everything together? Because our life is, when we zoom out, it's no longer these little beads. They're actually a little beads that tie into a bigger string, right? So why did it lead to a car industry? There's a lot in our subconscious mind, which is like 95% of what makes our reality, is that you don't even realize that you're in the car industry, maybe because of a story you've heard when you're a child. Maybe if it was something that you went over, maybe it was something where you were stuck and then a car actually helped you out of a situation. Whatever it is, it's not going to be until you sit down and write down all the life peak points that actually stood out to you. And then you string all those together. You're like, oh my gosh, this is why I'm here. This actually brought me here because of X, Y, Z, because your subconscious mind is always going to draw you to something that you actually want, but you might not you don't know it yet because you're not actually zooming out. You're so zoomed into what currently is happening.
Wow. I love this conversation. We're going to have you back so that we can whet their whistle with some tactics, we're dying to ask you things like, so should I just use my name or should I
go back to the logo?
Honda? Yeah. We're gonna have to have you back and talk about that sort of thing. But before we go, I want to make sure everybody understands you can get the show notes and resources mentioned in this episode, along with timestamps to jump forward to the elements of the conversation that you want to hear more about by visiting www.thedealerplaybook.com/Jaylissa-Lea. Last name is spelled Lea. So make sure you go check out the show notes there when this episode is published, and make sure you hit Jaylissa up and let her know what you thought of this information. Before we go, how can those listening get in touch with you?
Yeah, I am always interacting with people in my Instagram DMs, even though I have a website, jaylissa.com, but I love building that connection. So Jaylissa Lea for Instagram, and sent me a message. I love to connect.
I'm Michael Cirillo, and you've been listening to the Dealer Playbook Podcast. If you haven't yet, please click the subscribe button wherever you're listening right now. Leave a rating or review and share it with a colleague. Thanks for listening.